Nintendo's in a bit of a tight spot right now. The Nintendo Switch is currently 6 years old and in its 7th year as a recording date. We don't have any information about what the next Nintendo system will be except that it was coming sometime this decade and will be compatible with Nintendo Switch Online. The main problem Nintendo faces these next years is that they will need to try to settle into their next console, something after the Switch. Allow me to explain. Imagine you were Nintendo. You released the Switch back in 2017 and now you're ready to release your next console. It would be strange to devolve from the concept of the Switch and go back to just a console or just a handheld instead of a hybrid, so you know you'll have to make something like the Switch. Okay, well, what could you do to warrant a new version of the Switch that's different enough that people who already bought the original will buy this one? That's the main problem. See, this is the point where most Nintendo fans would just say, oh, just make it more powerful and bigger. But doesn't something ring a bell when you say that? Almost as if there was another majorly successful console that was one of the best selling of all time, and when a successor was made, all that was changed was just making it more powerful and adding a gimmick or two. That successor ended up being one of the worst performing modern consoles ever. Make you remember anything? Yeah, I'm literally describing the Wii U. The Wii U is one of Nintendo's biggest flops, and you don't need me to tell you that. The problem is, Nintendo doesn't really have many safe options here. People are craving a more powerful Switch, and they can't keep getting away with supporting the base model for the next few years. They're gonna have to act, and soon. So what can Nintendo do? Let's look at a few options of what a possible Switch successor might look like. The first option is a simple Switch upgrade, like the Switch OLED but with more graphical upgrades. This is very plausible, but I think it'd be more like a second one where we'd get more of a focus on innovating off of the base Switch hardware, adding onto it while staying true to the original. Maybe they'll upgrade the Joy-Cons, making them more responsive, adding a button or two maybe, and fixing the dreaded Joy-Con drift. A third and least likely option is Nintendo switching over to something completely new, maybe just a regular console or regular handheld. This isn't likely because why would they ditch the concept of the Switch when they could basically have both a handheld and a console in one without having to worry about some games being exclusive to a specific console? A new variation of the Switch just seems to work best, and that's unfortunate considering if they do want the majority of their audience to move to a new system, not just the Switch's hardcore fans, a simple upgraded Switch won't incentivize the majority of Nintendo's audience. But this just seems like they might just have to do it considering there are few other options. It'd have to be a regular gaming system of some kind. VR would be too much of a stretch considering they need to port over NSO, and that would just be inconvenient to play Mario Land in VR. So I think we can all agree to the conclusion that Nintendo's next system will have to be an advanced form of the original Switch hybrid design. Now let's see what they'll end up doing to make the console more distinguished from the original design, starting with something obvious. It's common sense that a Switch successor needs a major graphical upgrade. I wouldn't be surprised if they put up the 4K as a major selling point. Although personally, as a major Nintendo fan, I don't care much for graphics. Sure, I want a game to run smoothly and look good. I was one of the many few disappointed with Scarlet and Violet in this regard, but I do have trouble noticing the difference between 30 and 60 FPS sometimes. Anyways, something I'm betting on with the graphical upgrade is another thing that ties into an aspect of the Switch successor that is very likely, so let's talk about that. Backwards compatibility. I think it would be suicide if the successor didn't do this. The console is already guaranteed to have NSO ported over, but not having Switch games transfer over would cause an outrage and be a deal breaker for many, considering the modern age of gaming where with every new Xbox or PlayStation system, they're also backwards compatible. I think it's very likely we'll end up seeing this happen, and there's already been rumors supporting this. Usually 4chan is the last place to believe rumors, but a few days before the Pokemon Presents in February 2023, someone accurately leaked every single thing in the DLC trailer for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. From the exact name of the legendaries, to the themes of the DLCs, release windows, and upgraded Switch. Wait, what? Again, this is 4chan, there's likely two possibilities. One, this is either a real employee like they claim, or someone who's heard from a different insider and this is what they know and it is correct. Or two, it's the same thing, but if it is a real employee or someone who've heard something, they just added on Switch upgrade to mess with people. It could very well be either, but it's interesting regardless. They clarified that they made a graphic enchantment patch for the new Switch models that will be released alongside Pokemon Scarlet Violet DLC 2, and the second DLC was scheduled to release in winter 2023. Although the leaker came back a week later, clarified some things about what he said about DLC 2, and clarified it would release in winter 2024 instead of winter 2023. This made sense. It was already unusual that DLC 1 was releasing in fall and the second was releasing in winter. Not that far apart from Sword and Shield's DLC, which had a gap from summer and basically winter. Besides, technically winter begins December 21st in 2023, meaning they'd only have about 10 days if they want to release it this year, so a slight delay into January, February, or March makes sense. But I digress. Assuming this leaker is correct, then this graphically upgraded version of the Switch would be likely releasing holiday 2023, or very early 2024 like the original Switch March 3rd. And honestly, while a lot of people doubt it, I really think this is a Nintendo thing to do. Let's think about it here. As of recording, we only know 4 upcoming first-party Nintendo Switch games coming. There's Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp releasing in April, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom releasing in May, Pikmin 4 releasing in July, and Metroid Prime 4, which restarted development back in January 2019 with no current release date. We can skip over Advance Wars 1+2, but let's look at Tears of the Kingdom. It's common knowledge they delayed the release because they needed more time, but what if they also wanted to hold it out longer because they were developing graphical enchantments for a Switch successor, and maybe they think releasing it too early before the launch of the system would make the game too old and irrelevant for an upgrade. Pikmin 4 could likely be the same thing. They've been sitting on it for so long now, and they just want to throw out the base game and then release the graphical enchantments with the successor when it releases, conveniently on a series that is known for having graphics that were ahead of its time. For Metroid, Nintendo went at Retro Studios and Iron Galaxy Studios to make a really good looking remaster, and also graphical enchantments to release later on to make it look even better. They could also finally release Metroid Prime 4. While they're likely still working on it, it's likely that they're also waiting to fully utilize the fully enchanted graphics. And this is another IP known for having graphics ahead of its time. This definitely seems like a stretch, but I'm confident to an extent that select games will be receiving upgrades because of this all. I'm going to make a wild guess and assume that alongside exclusive upgraded games for the new Switch, some games with high quality graphics will be exclusive only to this new Switch, just like how some titles were exclusive to the new 3DS and not on the regular 3DS. I could see this happening with Prime 4, although while I understand there is a dedicated cult following to the series, I think a lot of people would be disappointed if it was a new Switch exclusive, making it sell worse than Nintendo wanted. Alright, so Nintendo's stuck into making a Switch 2, but they're still going to incentivize original Switch purchasers to buy this one. Obviously the graphical upgrade is an essential part of the console, but Nintendo knows that just because it looks good doesn't mean it plays good. It's obvious that Nintendo's been hiding games from us this year. As of now, we know nothing about their fall and winter schedule, as I mentioned, outside of DLC. The Mario team specifically hasn't released a new original game since 2017. And the 3D World port plus Bowser's Fury was also developed by multiple teams, not even mentioning they can multitask between projects in general. Hell, this gives us a solid reason as to why Nintendo is rumored to not be attending E3 this year. In June or July, they'll have a massive presentation revolving around the next system with all these games in it, similar to the Nintendo Switch presentation from back in 2017. If this supposed Switch 2 does release in the holiday 2023 or early 2024, I think we're practically guaranteed a new 2D or 3D Mario, alongside the heavily rumored Mario team-made Donkey Kong title. Those are major IPs that will be strengthened by the Mario movies released this year, and will finally have new entries after 5 and 9 years respectively. If they want system sellers, this is what they need. Although at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they're also developing some new IP to test out a gimmick the new console has. Maybe expand on something like AR, or maybe it'll have something similar to like the Amiibo card app on the 3DS, but that's a whole different discussion. I'm presuming over time, games will slowly become exclusive to the Switch successor, and by 2027, we'll barely see any games being supported by the base Switch. But as my predictions close, it is worrying. Will the Switch successor perform badly like the Wii U? Don't get me wrong, the Wii U didn't perform badly just because it didn't innovate. The marketing for the console was horrid, with a lot of people at first believing it was just an add-on for the Wii. And don't get me wrong, Nintendo consoles that are successors have succeeded in the past. Look at the 3DS family. While the newer variations didn't sell as great, after a rocky start with the base 3DS, the handheld went on to become one of the best-selling Nintendo handhelds ever. Well, if I were to make a prediction, it's likely it'll sell well as long as they keep it at a reasonable price. Best case scenario is that they decrease the base model's price to $250, OLED to $275, and Switch 2 at $300. It'd be cheap for such a graphical leap, but they'd have to do it if they want the console to perform great. I mean, look at the 3DS and how they had to do a price decrease. Overall, while it seems simple at the surface as to where Nintendo can go after the Switch, it's likely going to be one of their hardest system transitions to date. And even if I'm completely wrong and Nintendo makes a VR system or something, it'll be interesting to see how that all unfolds. And that's about all I have to say. If you want to hear more of me rambling on about Nintendo, I made a video on my love-hate relationship with the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass DLC. And I also made some other Nintendo related videos you might like. Well, that's about all from me. I still don't really know how I'm supposed to end these videos, but thanks for watching, and feel free to leave feedback in the comments because that's something I desperately need. Okay, thanks, bye!